Namaste. Welcome to another episode of Nepali Times Studio Talk. Today we have Nadir Patel, Canada's ambassador to Nepal. Welcome, Nadir.
Thank you so much.
I would like to start with Canada's assistance to Nepal in terms of water resources, aviation sector. Do you see the long-term impact of that partnership, or how has that seed money helped to Nepal?
Absolutely. Let me step back as Canada's ambassador to Nepal. It's always a privilege and a pleasure to be here. We've had a very productive 2 days. Yesterday I had a very good meeting with the Prime Minister. I also had a very productive meeting with the President of Nepal. We talked about a number of issues where Canada and Nepal are cooperating. It could be environmental initiatives on the multilateral stage. We both have a focus on gender, women and girls in particular. We discussed tourism, education, and other ways in which we could perhaps make our relationship even further closer in the months and years ahead. Also today, I've announced some additional funding, an additional $14.9 million in new funding. And this complements money that has already been announced and is in action here in Nepal with respect to post-earthquake relief efforts. In addition to that, an additional $4.7 million to the World Bank Group for their rural housing redevelopment, post-earthquake redevelopment project. We had already invested $10 million with the World Bank Group on that before.
What are the other development priorities of Canada around the world? You just mentioned about your priorities in Nepal. What are the other sectors of priority for Canada?
Well, I would say, first of all, our government very recently, over the last couple of months, announced Canada's new international assistance policy. And that policy we refer to as the Feminist International Assistance Policy. So, as that will tell you, a very significant and primary focus on gender with respect to women and girls in particular. And we believe that a focus on ensuring gender equality, opportunities for girls in terms of education, in terms of health, will contribute to a more prosperous social and economic society as well.
Right.
So that underpins our priorities, not only in Nepal, but other countries. The only other thing I would say is we don't have what we would have had in the past in the context of bilateral development programs or countries of focus. We will direct funding to for vulnerabilities where there are the most opportunities to address vulnerabilities. So, some of the money that is invested here in Nepal, of course, does deal with some of these issues, and we'll look for new opportunities. And one of the things that I'm doing on this visit is to try to understand what are development priorities here in Nepal, and how could we match up Canada's interests with what's happening here. I should also mention, I brought with me the executive director for IDRC, International Development Research Center, which is a Canadian organization, and they have 14 projects of about $14 million active right now here in Nepal in a number of areas. And if you look at the last multiple number of years, Canada has about $120 million in investment in terms of development funding in Nepal. So it's an important partner for us, and of course...
So we can understand that the priority of Canada will be more in the sector of gender equality than it has been in other sectors in the past?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and that will underpin our focus. But under that there are subsets including education, health, awareness, and things along those lines as well. So.
And when we talk about other issues like climate change, how does Canada plan to address the issue of climate change in the Himalayas?
So Canada is working with a number of organizations here. And I met with a number of those organizations today. I mentioned IDRC, so they have funded research around dealing with some of the effects of climate change in the mountainous regions, water management and irrigation techniques to ensure that the impacted populations, which is about a fifth of the population if you think of this sort of Himalayan region that is impacted by climate change and water-related issues.
So I would like to talk a few things about your immigration policy as well. So Canada is being liberal when it comes to immigrants. So do you face any backlash from Canada's white people?
We don't have the same sentiments that have been expressed in a number of other countries around the world around Canada's opening up of our immigration processes. Now, of course, every country, including Canada, will have different viewpoints, dissenting viewpoints. That's the beauty of a democracy. But if you look at the fact that Canada, not only now, but well into the future, relies on and will continue to rely on immigration to support our economic growth, immigration will continue to be a very important part of that. When we talk about Canada's efforts in settling Syrian refugees and others, we've done that in a very informed way to ensure that our institutions can manage settlement, to ensure that we provide the support for refugees. When we look at permanent residents and other visitors or other immigration into Canada from business, family reunification, whatever it might be, we have very robust processes in place to ensure that that growth is managed in a responsible way.
So in your meeting with the Prime Minister and other political leaders in Nepal, were you able to share your experience or Canada's experience in terms of federalism, autonomy, especially Quebec? Could you please share?
Yeah, we did discuss the transition to federalism, the movement towards democracy, and what has been happening here in the last several years. And in particular, what we've indicated is, despite the challenges, the progress and the success has been quite noteworthy. It's not easy to promulgate a constitution. It's not easy to bring into force for the first time elections at the municipal level and now at the provincial. And
after the constitution, we are holding our federal elections. So how do you see this process?
we think it's a great thing. It's a movement in the right direction, and we firmly believe in free and fair elections, and the fact that this is happening is very, very important for Canada. We have supported capacity building in Nepal around federalism. Canada had funded a project through the Forum of Federations that brought in some capacity and policy knowledge in this area as well. And we do have an experience with respect to federalism. We think the challenges will be significant because it's not easy to implement new electoral systems at different subnational levels and to ensure that that's done in a way that has clearly defined separation of duties and powers. But the fact that there has been significant progress in a relatively short period of time, and in many respects, despite Nepal's long history, it's still a young country, and I think it's been very notable. And we discussed some of that in those meetings. So.
Once again, thank you so much for joining Nepali Times. Thank you.